Let's talk about the film Anora, which I will tell you is in my top 5. I think Sean Baker really delivered such an amazing and beautiful film here, and I really want to talk about the ending and the themes around the whole story. So this isn't really like a recap of the movie or anything like that, like I usually do with any explains, because I think the movie is pretty straightforward, but I do want to discuss more about the whole theme surrounding class, wealth, and workers and all of that. So that's what I'm doing here today. I do have a review where I do just tell you my thoughts and opinions on it, and maybe I'll throw in a couple of little lines here and there about how I feel about these scenes that I'm going to discuss. But for the most part, we're just talking about the ending and the themes around this film. So if you hate Ending Explains and you want to already just screenshot the thumbnail and put it up on Twitter, cool. We've done that before. I'm cool with it. It's been years since I've been doing these. I'm used to it. But let's talk about Anora, one of my favorite films I saw all year. So the thing about Anora here is that we see that Annie pretty much is trying to get a sense of control in her life. She is a stripper, she is a sex worker, and she's trying to sort of become something more. We see it in her. It isn't explicitly said. And ultimately, once she crosses paths with Vanya and she sees this way of getting out of this life, when Vanya promises to marry her and give her a whole new experience that she's never had, it is exciting for her. But at the end of the day, for Vanya, this is just another good time. Although he might say the right words at the right time, we really do get the sense that he doesn't really care for her. It's just an accessory, a new experience, a game for him. Whereas for Anora, throughout the whole film, we see that she is really looking forward to everything here. And Anora seems to be somebody who doesn't really understand what it means to just go forth and be with someone without any strings attached or anything like that, because for the most part that we know her, she's just been somebody who has to sort of give something in order to receive something else, and hasn't really gotten that kindness. And I think she wasn't given that grace, and everybody she's met for the most part is usually looking for something in return from her, albeit whether that's a relationship, a dance, or even sex. And so this is what she equates to being nice to her, is she has to give something in return. Now with Vanya in itself, we have to talk about this relationship. They go, they have fun, they ultimately get married. Vanya's parents find out, and we see that Toros and everybody involved with the parents is saying, like, we got to put an end to this. This is not going to be a real wedding. This has to stop. So we see them go through all of this to get it done. And I think that's very important here, is that all of these characters, Toros as well as Igor and Toros's brother, they're all workers at the end of the day, right? Like, they're all working, and Anora is a worker as well. There's this sort of thing in Anora where you see the different classes, the wealth inequality that's here, because Vanya and his parents can just spark out orders from wherever they are. They don't have to worry about anything, whereas we see Igor is trying to make a living, and this might not be the job he wants to do, right? Being like a henchman of sorts and all of that, but it's the job that's paying him right now. And we see that Toros as well would rather be at the baptism for his family and all of that that's going on. But due to the whole thing where he has to be paid by the family and things like that, he has to skip out on these things. He has to call in basically with his family in order to go work, because he is at the whim of the dollar, of the money. And these wealthy individuals that just think everybody's at their disposal, they just snap their fingers and you're there. And that's how Vanya seems to go around life as well. We see him, he thinks he has unlimited money, so he can do whatever he wants. He can go to Vegas at a whim, he can get married to Anora at a whim, and he can continue on with his life without her. And I think a big thing about it was that he maybe just got married to Anora because maybe he did kind of have a liking to her, but maybe he was just trying to push his parents. He seems to be somebody who likes to do rebellious things, push the buttons as far as he can and see how far he can get with things. And it was almost all like a game to him as well, because he quickly, like, as soon as things got tough and he was against the wall, he really wasn't there to defend Anora. We saw he just ran away, and this is something that Toros tries to explain as well to Anora, that he hasn't grown up. And we've heard it many times before that people, when they get insanely rich or they get famous, they pretty much have a stunted growth, and that's the age they stay. So Vanya coming into all of this money at a young age because his parents were so wealthy, it's safe to assume that he just just things like a child. And so if something gets tough, even though he wanted something, he'll drop it because he still wants to live that life of luxury. Once he found out that he would be cut off, that he wouldn't get no more money or all of that, he didn't care about Anora. He cares more about the power and the wealth. And I think that's something that Anora really emphasizes here, is that all of these people, these workers, Igor, Toros, Anora, the brother, they're all just at the whim of wealth and power. They're moved by it. They're controlled by it. There's nothing that they can do. And I think this is the frustration that builds up in all of them as they're trying to find Vanya, because they're out here looking for this arrogant kid who doesn't care about either of them, and they're all at the whim of it because of the power that their wealth and their money has over them. And so I think what's really important in the end, once we see that the marriage gets annulled, that Vanya goes back to Russia, he didn't care about Anora, he doesn't even face her or try to explain or talk to her after this. The parents are pretty much assholes to Anora and to Toros and to Igor and everybody, is that we see that by the end of it, they just have themselves, and that's how we are ourselves as workers. We're just here at the whim of them all. And of course, Anora is also a sex worker, which is something that's looked down upon even in our society. And the interesting thing about that is, why would you look down upon somebody who's trying to find a means to make money, especially in a capitalistic society that we have here that is so about draining resources, and the resources are being hoarded, the money and all of that, by the 1%, while the rest of us are just out there just trying to sort of find any ways to survive. And Anora finds this way to survive as a sex worker and still is looked down upon that, even though she is trying her best and trying to get out of this situation. And I think it's such an important thing to tell this story and to highlight how these sex workers are so looked down upon, but it is our own capitalistic society that moves them into whatever they're doing. And I think this film does a great job at exploring that. Now, for the ending that we get here with Anora and Igor gives Anora the engagement ring, which of course they were supposed to give back to the family. At the end of the film, we see Anora is happy about it, and then ultimately she tries to reciprocate, give him something in return, and in her mind she has to give him sex. This is how she's based her whole life up until now, that this is how she has to please somebody. If they do something nice for her, they're not just being nice, right? They're doing this because they want something in return. But of course we know Igor was just being a nice person. He knows about how these people are, these wealthy people don't care about the people that are poor, that are working, all of that. They see them as pawns, as toys, as things that are disposable to them. And so I think that that's why he found sort of a soft spot for Anora. Maybe he likes her, maybe he doesn't. We don't really get that intention from Igor. It seems that he's just doing his job. He's just trying to survive. He's living with his family, and he's just trying to sort of have that American dream, you could say, as well. When Anora is trying to give him this reciprocation, we see that Anora breaks down, and we see that Igor pretty much showcases that this was not his intention at all as he embraces her. And that final shot is so powerful as we see these two people that are workers, that are under the weight of money, of capital in our society, just have each other at the end of the day. So I think that's what makes the ending to Anora that much more impactful, is that Anora was pretty much holding all of these emotions in throughout the whole time, because throughout the runtime of the movie you just see Anora's angry, she's pissed, which of course she should be as well, but she was never able to really express herself by the end because she didn't want to come off as weak or less than everybody around her, which is something I think was such a defensive thing about her. And that makes sense that she would put up these walls and these barricades because she doesn't want the real Anora to come out. And I think when she was with Igor in the last few moments of the film, I think she saw that Igor was somebody who wasn't trying to get anything out of her. He was just a genuine human being, and that genuine human connection was something I think she had been longing for so long, but she didn't really know how to express it. And I think by the end she's able to really just let all her barriers down, all her walls are out of the way, and she's able to just pour out her feelings, which I think which just makes such an incredible scene at the end that really gets to you, I feel. And I think what's so insane about this is that in the film we see as they just throw her out like she's nothing, that they're done with her. They don't even make any attempt to get to know who she really is. And the only one that really did was just Igor at the end from what we saw in the film. And we see these very different moments and situations in which there's a lot of control, whether it's a parental control that we saw from Vanya's parents, or how money controls us as workers to do things that maybe we don't really want to do, but then we're forced to do, and also power, but also patriarchal, as we see that Anora is really looked down upon for what she does, even though this is something that she has to do because of her situation, which is a very real thing we see with a lot of sex workers today. And I think the hard part about this film is that at the end, Anora does find a human connection with Igor, but she now realizes how she's been used in this situation with Vanya and just pretty much thrown out like she was nothing, and that's it. It's all over. I've also heard some people talk about maybe the reason she breaks down is because Igor does accept the invitation to have sex right after he gives her the ring, and he could possibly be just doing this in order to get something out of her, and she realized this, which I think is an interesting concept as well to gather here, that maybe she just feels that everybody, they're all the same and they're never going to change, and this is how they view her, which I think is an interesting approach to this as well. And also some people might say that the kiss that he was trying to initiate while they were having sex was like the trigger point if you see it in the film, and that might be because she was just trying to sort of use this sex as a transaction for the ring, but not really trying to go any further into a relationship. Maybe she doesn't really kiss them while they're having sex, which I thought was interesting as well. And I think there's just so many ways you can look at this film. There's so many different like themes and symbolisms throughout. We could talk about it for like an hour with all of the different scenes, but I just want to give my quick thoughts on the ending, which I think is just incredible in this film as well. And there's just so much about it. With the capitalistic society we live in that controls our society through the power of wealth and these individuals that have it, while the workers are the ones that are pulling it all together and holding it up, and they're the ones that get the shorter end of the stick, which is just a very sad reality of where we are. And I think Sean Baker really made such a beautifully layered story here, and I'm ready to check it out again. I will be watching it again, and maybe we'll do a live or a full podcast episode where we discuss the film. I haven't watched this since TIFF, so definitely will be watching it. But let me know what you thought about the ending and everything and what it meant in the comments down below. We will be discussing it more. Stay tuned. But as always, I'll see all of you next time. Follow us, subscribe to our channel. Make sure you check us out on Instagram. We got a giveaway announcement tonight. And I'll see y'all next time. Stay safe, stay positive.